Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews of just about every indie game we can get our hands on, and today we're going to be taking a look at Espacio Cosmic Light-Seeker for the Nintendo Switch. And I just have to say, starting off the review, this game is pretty much beyond description. I mean, there's no way to describe its crazy amount of uniqueness. Which is why, after we've covered the gaming dynamics, after we've gone through the pros and cons and critiques and flaws, and of course, successes, I'm going to have a portion after the review to talk about some of that deep, dark stuff that's going on behind the scenes. But before the tension builds way too high, let's get into the review. If you've seen Espacio Cosmic Light-Seeker on the eShop and looked at the screenshots and read the description, you're probably thinking it's something like a tabletop RPG or some sort of fantasy adventure game. I mean, it has cute characters, you're exploring space, you're trying to find the light. And of course it advertises that there are collectible item books that you're trying to fill out. But if those were one of your two ideas as to the genre of the game, you couldn't be further from the truth. Because the closest thing it could possibly be lumped into is maybe actually a dungeon crawler. As far as the gameplay itself, Espacio Cosmic Light-Seeker is played out on a gigantic game board. And while your objective through the most part of the game is to find the light, which is kind of your exit to the dungeon, every single darkly veiled square on that game board will either have a friend or a foe, or maybe a magical item or a clue to find to help you get towards your exit. As I briefly mentioned, the overall goal in each dungeon is to find that exit, which exists in the form of an orb of light. And this multicolored orb of light has been interacted with by dozens of creatures in this game. And whether you're finding colored butterflies that react to the light in certain ways, or colored jellyfish, or even dust bunnies, or the feces of the light itself, you'll have to learn to interact with all of these clues to learn the color of the light, the sound of the light, or even the smell of the light, in order to compile all these hints and clues together to track it down on a completely unlabeled map. Thankfully though, while nearly every single square in the map game board is completely black, everywhere there might be a hint to where the light might be, you'll see a small twinkling star in each of the game's squares. And while so far this might seem like a simple search and seizure style detective game, every single movement you make in the game takes away a bit of your health, and of course the number of deducted health points is increased the further you make it into the game's 15 chapters. And other than the simple objective of trying to use clues to track down the light, which is, again, your exit from the dungeon, Cosmic Light-Seeker was very accurate in its descriptions of just how overloaded the game is with crazy characters and unique items. Certain characters may seem completely daunting, but just be friendly merchants. Others may want nothing to do with you unless you give them a gift, and still others might tell your fortune or just want to do you a favor. But that doesn't mean that Cosmic Light-Seeker is without its troubles, because whether it is a random falling comet that can strike off 20 or even 40 points of your life, there are plenty of pitfalls such as warps, random cat's paws, and of course a whole slew of baddies hidden in any one of the game's dark squares. Looking at Cosmic Light-Seeker visually though, it's an incredibly unique game with fun characters and a really light vibe. And your little co-companion Cellular can take the form of a person, a robot, a little animal, a vegetable, but whichever form you choose for your companion to take, you can either unlock or purchase new features to customize their look. The audio package of the game though is fairly sparse. There are a lot of sound effects, but because of some of those undercurrents of the game that I mentioned right at the beginning of the review, most of the gameplay, at least audio-wise, will feel just about as empty as those dark squares on the game map. And as Cosmic Light-Seeker is a very small and straightforward game, that's about it for the mechanics and the visuals and the audio, leading us toward the next section of the review, which is the critiques. Starting out with the critiques though, I'd like to say that I really did enjoy Cosmic Light-Seeker. It was a very novel game, and there was so much going on that took a lot of time to really understand. But whether you're willing to push through it all the way to the end, or you're only willing to try it out as far as a few minutes or so, there are a couple of things you might want to know before you dive in. And first and foremost of which is possibly the game's genre, as I mentioned previously. Despite the goofy characters, despite the collectibles, despite the somewhat at least seemingly bright and comical air of the game, it's not a fantasy RPG, and there's no action to be had. And even though it is a dungeon crawler by all rights, even the combat and enemy confrontations are quickly ended with the selection of an item, which will either save your health points or do nothing and sacrifice a little bit of health. And so in that sense, even though it's a dungeon crawler, the lack of combat, the constantly building story, and the massively overwhelming subtext of the game almost make it seem a bit like a walking sim. And so if you are looking for exciting action and you're not looking for a journey into the self, then maybe Cosmic Light-Seeker might not exactly be the game that you're looking for. Other than that, an obvious concern for players is going to be the game's length. A full playthrough from start to end could last anywhere from maybe an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, depending on how much time you really take for exploration or how much you invest in character customization. And so for the price tag, if you're expecting it to be a 5 to 7 hour game, that might be a concern. Now, if you do get into it and you do enjoy it, there are different difficulty levels, and of course there is a lot to collect if you are a completionist gamer, so it has the potential to be a much longer game. But as playing through Cosmic Light-Seeker is really about discovery of the story, maybe after you've played through it once on whichever difficulty level you've chosen, you might not see as much of an incentive to play through it again. And so a slight lack of replay value is also one of its critiques. Other than that though, taking a step back and looking at it as an entire package and an entire experience, I have to say I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. It was goofy, it was fun, and best of all, it was novel and unique. But there is one more thing that I didn't expect, and it actually took me most of the game to really figure out. And this is where we're getting into potential spoiler territory, so if you don't want to know about some of the game's subtexts, then just go ahead and mute the audio or click off the review. You've heard basically what it's about and you've seen the critiques, so you probably have enough information to decide. But if you don't think you're going to play the game anyway, then why not just stick around and learn more about it? Okay, so here it is. Basically, Cosmic Light-Seeker looks like a bright, cheerful, goofy game. And it's kind of supposed to look that way. Because the entire gaming experience is one giant metaphor for wearing a false happy exterior with all the inner turmoil. You're playing through universes and dungeons, and you're trying to find the light to escape. So, pretty easy metaphor of escapism. But before each level, you have to pick a few words to basically describe your current mood. And when you really start thinking about it, the positive words to describe your mood are something you actually have to seek out. And as the entire subtext of the game starts to become very, very transparent as dealing with thoughts of suicide and darker thoughts, the metaphorical presence of the game becomes really, really clear in the fact that you have to seek out happiness. You have to find your own light. And of course, the game has a beautiful positive ending. But if you're not ready for a deep, dark game that makes you really confront your inner demons if you have been through something dark yourself, then it might hit you a bit of a broadside. And that's about it for my meta-analysis of the game. So, this in fact brings us to the end of the review of a Cosmic Light-Seeker now for the Nintendo Switch. So if you enjoyed the review, or especially if you found it helpful, feel free to throw us a like or a comment to show your support. And don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content, because there are new and unique indie games coming out literally every single day. And man, is this one proof of that. And so whether it's an easy hard pass or an absolutely unforgettable gem, chances are if it's on the Switch, you're gonna find out about it right here. But anyway, this has been The Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.